Cool. Morena, everybody. Tēnā koutou katoa. So, Ko Josephine Tokuingoa, and I'm with Toitū Envirocare. And I'm delighted to be hosting the series of sustainability for the Parnell Business Association. My day job is with Toitū Envirocare as GM of Sales and Marketing, but I also am on the board of the Parnell Business Association. My role is to sort of really try and bring some sustainability opportunities through to the Parnell businesses. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So as Cheryl says, this is the second, or I hope, can I check you can see my screen?
I can't see your screen, Joey.
Okay. Let me try that again then, share my screen.
Looks like it's going to be working.
Okay, I'll just do it. Okay, can you see any slides yet?
Nope. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so as Cheryl said, this is the second in our series. The last webinar we covered off was around reducing energy, and today's is around reducing waste to landfill. Very important issue. Currently, only 2% of waste in New Zealand is recycled. So New Zealand's got a huge opportunity to, increase our recycling. The purpose of the sustainability series that we're bringing to you is really, as I said, to prepare Parnell businesses for a low carbon economy and look at ideas and practical tips that they can do to be able to reduce emissions and reduce waste and energy in their businesses, but also to connect like-minded businesses, because within Parnell has many exemplar organizations that have been doing this for a long time, but also businesses that are really at the very early stages of their journey. And so it's about bringing those organizations together. So we encourage you to take part in the whole series, regardless of where you are on your sustainability journey, and particularly with the different topics that we have, because we're hoping to create quite a cohort of businesses that can help one another. So probably before we get into sort of what a typical Auckland household waste might look like, one of the things that obviously what we want to do, the very best way to tackle waste is actually to look at the design, to design waste out in the first place, and to create a sort of circular economy. So ideally, we would all products and services that we buy, the packaging either could be fully recycled or could be repurposed, or have no packaging. So obviously we're at the point where that's not an option for us at the moment. You go to the supermarket or you go and do your sort of buy daily things, and typically it comes in all sorts of different types of packaging. This is an issue that many businesses have grappled with for quite a long while, and now we are seeing some quite clever packaging designs on products and services. But really, we're only just scraping the very bottom of the barrel at the moment in terms of only just starting to see those kind of innovations coming through. So unfortunately, we are faced as businesses with a lot of waste that for the goods and services that we buy or that we create, and so we have to obviously do something with those. In terms of from an Auckland perspective, the average rubbish bin, as you can see here, it actually contains 65% of waste that could have been put to a much better use. So it'll have a big chunk of food waste that could have been composted. It'll have recyclables. It might be that we've contaminated them and we've put them in our waste, or we just were lazy and just put them all in the one bin. And then we have really good quality garden waste that really should be composted. And this is where we're keen as well to hear from Ben, who owns Hungry Bins, around some of the ideas that they can do, but also I know other providers like Green Gorilla can take that lovely compost and turn it into really good, good resources. So So every Aucklander sends about 144 kgs of rubbish a year, which is a phenomenal amount. Over Christmas, probably be no surprise that we see that increase by at least 10% of waste to landfill and about a 20% increase in recyclables. But as I mentioned earlier, only 2% of waste is recycled in New Zealand. In total, we send 28% of waste to landfill. So there's a huge opportunity here for businesses to be able to sort of look and see how they could tackle waste in a better way. There's many providers. So just clicked onto the next slide so that hopefully you can see. I've just highlighted a few of the providers that I'm aware of that provide services in the sort of Auckland and wider region, but do your homework. So one of the first things I'd encourage you as a business to do is actually look at your waste and look and carry out, if you're big enough, carry out a waste audit. Actually have a look in what is in your bins. What are you sort of throwing away each week? You can either do the waste audit yourself, or I know Reclaim will come in and do a waste audit for you. And so have a look and see what it is you're disposing of. And then there's many providers that you can go to that can then take those resources, whether it's cardboard or food waste, and utilize it into other ways. And I know some organizations, when they take that waste, send it overseas to get recycled. Other organizations, and I know Green Gorilla's got a fantastic way of sorting through its waste and working out what are those good resources that can be recycled. So do your homework, choose your provider that's really going to be able to provide the best solution for you and the best solution for recycling as much of your waste as you can here in New Zealand. Today, we hopefully have two speakers, and I'm going to introduce our first speaker, which is Joe Youssef at All Heart New Zealand. I came across All Heart New Zealand actually a little while ago when I had one of our Toitu clients asking us around how can we dispose of our e-waste in a responsible way, because I'm not convinced that the council's e-waste recycling actually is really tackling and using those resources as well as we can. So I came across e-waste then, and Joe, as I say, is going to be our first speaker, and then it'll be Ben. Just going to give you a little bio on Joe before we jump to Joe. So Joe is the Chief Encourager, which I think is a fantastic title, and the founder and trustee of All Heart NZ. He was formerly the co-founder and chair of Coast Youth Community Trust and has a background in business management and startup ventures. He has a passion for seeing people become all they were created to be. I love that passion. Joe served as a pastor at Whangaparoa Baptist Church for 12 years and is also now involved in a startup in the coffee industry. Joe is married with 2 children. And so I would like to hand over to Joe.
Well, kia ora everyone. Thank you for that very warm welcome. And it's a real privilege to be on with you everyone today. It's a real pleasure that and an encouragement that the Business Association is looking at these issues. So thank you everybody for the invitation. Kia ora tātou katoa, nā mihi atu nāku kia koutou, e roto e manakitanga e tō tātou matua nui e te rangi. That simply means greetings from myself and from my e tu mata matua e te rangi, my big daddy in heaven, is what that means. And ko hohipataku ingoa, my name is Joseph, and I am the Chief Encourager of All Heart NZ. He rangatira hau mo aroha nui tātou o Aotearoa. It's supposed to mean everybody loving New Zealand is what All Heart NZ was all about. That's where the name came out of. It's a strange name for a trust involved in sustainability, but it's kind of not where it initiated. Ko mātātua taku waka, ko Ngāpui taku iwi, ko Ngātahini taku hapu. My whānau, my tangata whenua whānau is from the far north, and I've had the privilege of launching a work up in Kaikoui in the last few months, which has been a true blessing to us. And my grandmother was tangata whenua from Ngāpui. My father was Lebanese, hence the name Yusuf. I inherited that from him, believe it or not. and my mother was Swiss Māori, and I married a South African. So all that to say, my kids are a true Kiwi fruit salad. So that's right. Can everyone hear me okay before I carry on?
Yep.
Awesome.
All good.
Awesome. Hey, so really, I start All Heart NZ as a story, then we'll go to a video so you can get a bit of an overview. But when I started All Heart NZ, I was pastoring at Whangaparoa Baptist Church. I came across an opportunity to redirect some stuff a corporate had. It was actually Air New Zealand. They had a aircraft hangar, about 5,000 plus items full of stuff because they were trying to do the right thing and not throw it away. However, they didn't really know what to do with it. And so someone put me onto it because I was heavily involved in local community and said, hey, can you do something with this, Joe? And I was like, oh, well, we'll have a look at it. So we started redirecting it to community need. One of the community groups we supported was, and this really was the heart, because I've been involved in the local community for about 25 odd years nationally as well, and saw so much need. And then I thought, well, is this really a problem? Are businesses really struggling with this stuff? Are they struggling to give away this stuff? I had no idea at the time that 83% of landfill was corporate and construction waste in Auckland. I had no idea that 50% of that actually is construction waste, which obviously Green Gorilla is making a dent into. And I had no idea about the environmental issues we're facing at all. I just thought this doesn't need to go to landfill, and I've got lots of groups that would happily have this stuff. So we started redirecting it. The first group that we supported was Vision West, which are now national, but they were in Glen Eden, I think they were, doing social housing. Amazing group. And the story came, we asked people for stories so we can repeat those back to our corporates and say, hey, look, this is where your stuff's gone to. A story came back that these items, they were just some pillows and blankets from the Heritage Hotel. They went to a mum who was living in her car in West Auckland, and they were about to put her into a house. Now I was probably pretty numb to that at that point, to be honest. I've had a lot of people sleeping in their cars. I'd helped a lot of people into houses, so I was kind of, yeah, you know, that's not too abnormal. But at that point, the caseworker said, oh, the 9-year-old boy, and I had a 9-year-old boy at the time, the 9-year-old boy has never owned his own pillow. The pillow you're giving him that would have ended up in landfill is the first pillow this 9-year-old boy ever got. And to be honest with you, it broke me, and it still has. It changed something in my life that meant I could never go back to just doing what I was doing. And hence birthed All Heart NZ's redirection service, which I'll show you in a minute. We, after a couple of years, we really felt that it was time to start looking at creating opportunities for that mum. It's great, these community groups are getting stuff. We've been really successful at redirecting items that would normally end up in landfill. We then said to start creating some employment, which is where we started All Heart Stores. The All Heart Stores exist to create employment. Somebody probably needs to mute.
Nikki, can you mute your mic, Han? Thank you.
And so we started All Heart Stores. We've started 4 of them across the country now, the latest one being in Kaikoui, and I'll explain a little bit more about those in a minute. Our third service, which I'll introduce to you today, is our reduced service. We're not talking about that too much today, but that involves a whole lot of really, really smart people that know a lot more than I know and are our specialists across the country and help our corporates think sustainably from redesigning their procurement. That's both ethical and social, so that involves modern day slavery right through to ethical and sustainable procurement. So I'll show you our video. Josephine's going to put our video up now, and then I'll take you through a few slides and take any questions at the end. Sustainability. We believe that corporate sustainability and community partnerships should be hand in hand.
Essentially, the redirection service works where you as a corporate have a whole bunch of stuff. It may be working or not working, and we will make it into something that's useful again.
And so what we do is provide a really simple framework for that, and we do the work for them. And that costs no more than sending it to landfill.
As a corporate, you can be sure that it's making a huge difference.
So when I am talking to a project manager or a property manager or a corporate, having a look at what they no longer need, and then they're saying to me, oh, that could go to a school, that could go to a kindy. And that makes me really excited because I know that they've got it.
So increasingly at AT now, we're looking at our sustainable procurement strategy and much more looking at how we can impact a regenerative economy or circular economy. We chose to partner with All Heart NZ when we had a big move of our head office where we were consolidating a lot of our offices into one.
There's actually no words to describe how much of a role that All Heart helped me with the move.
We contributed to many of their community groups, relieving poverty and helping education.
Our reduced service is the game changer. Where are we buying stuff and who is it affecting?
We do waste audits and waste education. So we find when we help corporates think about sustainability, see their waste, where it goes, they change their behaviour, they change their mindset, and they're able to look at every single part of their business.
And for the corporate, that gives them accountability and transparency for their supply chain. That is a game changer for sustainability in New Zealand.
So the repurposing service is all about finding initiatives of how we can upcycle, reuse, repurpose some of the waste that we receive from our corporates.
The stores are set up to create a circular economy. We also run the store because we want people to get really good deals for a really good price.
I work for All Heart NZ because just to make a difference for the community.
Helping the environment as well.
And it serves a purpose for those community groups and not-for-profits that we support.
We are a private training establishment and we provide education for at-risk youth. It's probably fair to say we wouldn't be running if we didn't have this. It's been a huge impact to us and how we operate.
So one of the main problems for corporates is time. We are a really easy one-stop solution to corporate sustainability.
And one of the things that's great about working with All Heart is it brings everything together. So we can do business and sustainability all in one.
Thanks, Josephine. If you just bring up the next slide, I'll explain a little bit about who we are and what we do in a few minutes. Kia ora everyone and welcome to All Heart NZ Charitable Trust. Thinking sustainably, supporting community. You just need to stop the YouTube channel behind you. Is to support community.
I'm gonna
groups
try.
and the establishment of community enterprise all around New Zealand. We do this. There we go. Thank you.
Apologies.
No, not at all. Just go back to the PowerPoint now.
I'm doing that. Yep.
Thank you. And just the next slide. Next one, thanks. Yeah, so you can see there who we are. Sorry. Thank you. Who we are, All Heart NZ is a charitable trust established in September 2016. That story I told you was kind of our founding story. That was actually before we were an established charity. With the objectives of promoting relief of poverty in New Zealand, promoting education programs and providing training opportunities for people without work in NZ, making donations to other charities, promoting sustainable business practices in New Zealand and advancing the message of hope and dignity, which is really our core. That's really our core kaupapa that really drives us. What we do, All Heart NZ partners with corporates to practically redirect and repurpose their redundant and pre-loved items. Our reduced service partnerships help to further develop the sustainable, ethical and social aspects of procurement and supply chain management. Why we do it? Basically because we don't believe anymore. We know that if we change the way we buy stuff and we change the way we dump stuff, we will positively impact people on our planet. And we've now got 5 years of case studies to prove it. And our priorities, you can see there, giving hope, restoring dignity, positively impacting people and environment and areas of society. If we go to the next one, I'll give you some just some data. So I've talked about our 3 services. Our Redirect is a national service, picks up everything and anything. Our long-term clients are still asking us, hey, do you take? And the answer is always yes. That's looked like 6,000 keep cups from Mitre 10 through to wheelie bins for the warehouse group, through to tens of thousands of kgs of office furniture and redundant stuff. At the moment, I'm redirecting. One of our clients is overstocked with hand sanitizer. So if anyone needs any, I've got 319,000 units of hand sanitizer that will end up in landfill if we can't redirect it. So we literally take everything and anything and we find a positive solution that affects people and planet. Repurpose, that's executed by our All Heart stores. Our All Heart stores, you can go and buy there, so please support them. There's 2 in Auckland, 1 in Wellington, 1 in Kaikohe. which is really exciting for us to be able to plant in the far north. Their kaupapa is a little bit different in creating employment, education, training, and volunteerism. Again, looking at how we could give that mum hope and dignity through sustainable employment. They've also managed to find sustainable ways of upcycling MDF. We have an MDF upcycling, very small plant in Manukau, but we take our MDF and we actually repurpose it for a lot of our clients. We do the same with plastics. We're in the middle of a couple of plastics repurposing programs at the moment where we take an item, we make it into something else for our corporate that they can use. And I can give lots of stories about this. And textiles, actually Auckland Transport, we just repurposed all of their uniforms, which again, you can find in our Facebook page. I could talk for hours about the various projects we've been involved in. And our reduced service, not going to talk about that too much. You can find that on our website. Next slide. Thanks, Josephine. So just some of our impact figures. Those pictures are real. So the picture of the boy with the breakfast mug, that was a couple of thousand bowls that one of our clients had, and that went to all the breakfast clubs throughout Auckland. The one down there with the guys in the piece of wood furniture, that was a whole lot of furnishing that went up to start a community hub in Whangaproa. And I think the one on the left is a Christchurch Alternative Education who got a lot of end-of-line stationery that would normally end up in landfill, and we were able to support their kaupapa. So we talk about funds raised and saved, 7,700,000. That's an actual calculated figure. It's not a guess. That's funds raised or saved by the community destinations, creating a circular economy, saving them money, supporting their core kaupapa. We've moved now just over 3 million kgs. I report in kgs because it sounds a whole lot more impressive than tons. We've supported 341 different community groups. That's in 40 regions around New Zealand and 7 countries now. We say carbon avoided because until we create a circular economy, these items are inevitably going to end up in landfill. So at the moment, we've avoided carbon, but we haven't minimized it. And our diversion rate, which is the next click, over the last 5 years has been 95.8%. And that's a fact. A lot of people question that, but we measure every single item, including our own rubbish that goes to landfill. Next slide. This is our wider impact. So we ask our the people we're helping, because for us, this is not waste. We didn't start as an environmental trust. We've been pulled into that because we're very good at giving stuff away and finding an innovative solution to upcycle and repurpose items. We don't focus on recycling at all. We don't even promote it. I believe recycling is a marketing ploy to make people feel better about their own consumerism. So until we give up that idea and actually just think about how we procure and what we do with the end of life. So you can see there the actual impact our communities have told us these items have had on them. So it's pretty stunning. You look at the education stats there, and this is these community groups reusing these items, and you can see all these videos on our website for their own benefit, supporting their own kaupapa, all of which would have ended up in landfill. Thank you. Next slide. That's some of my staff. You can again find them on our website, some of our specialists that work around the country. Next slide. So we developed significant impact partnerships with businesses who want to further their sustainability. We won't talk about that today, but those partnerships help us connect with them, give them our IP and support them in their sustainability journey. So you can go to the last slide now. Next one, sorry. So they're just some of the businesses we work with, but we work with about 2,000 corporates across New Zealand now, helping further support their sustainability efforts. So tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you, Joe.
That was great. Thank you, Joe. What a wonderful story as well, and what amazing impact you're having on many people. So how rewarding is your job? And as I said, loved the title, Chief Encourager. Should be Chief Impact. So thank you. Just one quick housekeeping. If you aren't presenting, if you could mute yourselves, I'd really appreciate it, so because the background noise comes through. So I'd now like to introduce Ben Bell. Ben is the founder of Low Impact and the creator of the Hungry Bin Worm Farm. I have one at home, and I have every time lifted the lid and put in my food waste. I love seeing them all, worms busy at action. So it's a great concept. Ben started off young with grandparents having incredible gardens and his grandmother having bees. So they were constantly embedding themselves in high quality food and a passion for sustainability. His upbringing was very focused on growing food by organic means, which he terms his kaupapa, respect for growing food and eating it, being always present. Then when living in Auckland, he decided on worm farming so as to build up the soil at the back of his flat in Grey Lynn. At the time, he was working in television, making commercials, but Ben realized that there were far larger issues in life. So he decided to shift towards a positive contribution to the environment. So he started by reworking some old plastic worm farms out of discarded products in his backyard, and here we are today. So I would like to hand over to Ben.
Oh, kia ora koutou, and thank you very much, Josephine. You must have dragged through a whole lot of bios to get all that information. I was like, where did that come from? She's been stalking me around the internet. Hey, well, it's a really great synopsis of how I got here. And the wider issue that drives us, I think I'll just, start for you all. What is driving, man? We are living in a society where you are allowed to consume as many resources as you like, as long as you can legally pay for them. And the cost of that consumption is being pushed onto future generations, which we've all heard about. I'm going to put it in stark relief. I get a little bit grumpy when I hear the dairy industry, asking for help from the government for an adverse weather event when they've spent a long time telling us that their activities are not impacting the environment. And all of us are going to have to stand up and take a little bit of responsibility for all of our activity. None of us are immune from creating carbon and creating environmental impacts. And our idea is really to help use a natural process to encourage people to achieve the best environmental outcome that we can. And I think Joe was really talking to that before. It's about just shifting your mindset and saying, hey, there is actually a better way to do this. And when we do it a different way, we achieve a whole lot of outcomes that we wouldn't necessarily get if we, do a pay and throw, buy and throw away. And so that's really where the kaupapa comes in. So right now I'm sitting here, that are processing most of the, or all of the organic waste really that is produced in this business. And we've got gardens outside, we've got staff here producing waste, and here it is in the entry foyer. Obviously we sell them, so we want some to show people how they work. But right now I'm in a room with a working compost system. And that's really the idea, is that we're trying to create a product that scales at a human scale. So you can, one bin will process, the waste of 2 or 3 people, 100 bins or 200 bins will process the waste. There it is there. That's a photograph of an installation at Mount Eden Prison, which is being moved to Woody Prison. And that's processing the organic waste that right now is processing the organic waste produced by 3 meals a day for roughly 900 people a day is getting processed on site. So they have no organic waste leaving the site. They have some residual and stuff that they're not capturing, but pretty well they're processing it on site. And that's the market that we're interested in. A really important concept that I think we need to kind of discuss, that I talk a lot about, is that we're at a point in our history where we can't just take the next step up the sustainability. I should be able to say that properly after all these years, the next step up the sustainability ladder. So going the next step up the rung is really not going to do it. We've actually got to get right to the top of the ladder. And once we're right at the top of the sustainability ladder, we never have to revisit the implementation we've done. So I think this is incredibly important now. When I start talking to corporates, when I start talking to businesses and organisations, even families, they really don't want to make the investment that's going to be required over the long term to reduce our impact as much as possible. And so if you're thinking about worm farming, the very best way to process organic waste back into a plant available form to get the highest value for that activity is to use worms. because they produce the best compost there is, without a doubt. If anyone wants to tell you that they can take their organic waste and run it through an organic digester and produce anything close to vermicast, they're dreaming. And the other issue we've got is that lots of people are promoting vermicast and selling it, but it's not really vermicast. It's a composting process that's had some worms in it. And what I would say to you is that the vermicast you can produce in your own backyard, at the back door of your business, in the basement of your parking building, wherever you are, is the highest quality fertilizer you can produce. So your organisation, once you're doing that, will never have to revisit how you dispose of organic waste. And then going back to Joe's earlier point, you can spend a lot more time looking at your procurement processes and looking at the residual waste that you're creating within your business to minimise the amount you therefore have to dispose of at the end of life. And I think that's a really important part. Nothing is as cheap as digging a hole and throwing something into it and charging people for it. And capitalism is like a hill. The cash flows down to the easiest amount of profit, so it goes the steepest way possible. And so if we think about our environmental degradation and we follow the profit model, we're taking the steepest route to the bottom if we concentrate on profit. If we want to create something that is good for the longer term, we've got to stay on the ridges and we've got to ensure that everything slows down. We've got to plant trees so that the water slows down, and by the time it makes it to the river, the environment can cope with it. And that's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about environmental interventions. If you ride your bike to work, right, you are using 1,000th of the energy that someone driving the car is taking. And the one that really struck me the other day is a Tesla, right, has the same amount of batteries as 200 e-bikes, and it uses 50 times the energy of an e-bike to go a kilometre. So we can't take the step up the sustainability ladder. Electric cars are going to be part of the solution, but they are not the answer in the long term. The answer in the long term is to radically cut our carbon. So in that respect, if your organisation is thinking about switching to what you're going to do with the organic waste rather than put it in landfill, if you take a longer term approach and you say, whatever process we use, if it's regular composting on the ground, or we're going to use bokashi and trench compost it, or we're going to use one of the many worm farming systems around, what we want to do is never have to revisit that again. And I'm going to put this in a stark contrast. Auckland Council have decided to collect the organic waste of Auckland City and process it using anaerobic digesters. And I can tell you that in 25 years' time, within 25 years' time, when the contract runs out, they will have spent several $100 million doing that, and they're going to have to revisit that because in 25 years' time, trucking waste anywhere will not be an option. If Auckland Council had spent that same amount of money encouraging everyone to compost at home, and it's the same as encouraging everyone to ride bikes or encouraging everyone to do X, Y, or Z, in 25 years' time, they would not have to truck any waste anywhere because the whole community would be processing waste. So to end, I'm going to say, look, our philosophy is to create something that helps people use a natural process to reduce their waste. There's lots of options out there, and what we've tried to do is part of our commercial, I guess, tension is to create something so that we can tell a good story about how it does, how it works, and that we can effectively compete with the suite of other options that are out there. So I'm not here to tell you 100% it's the only way to process your organic waste. We'll just hope that enough of you will decide that it is the best option for your company or organisation so that we can stay afloat. And that this is the kind of thinking that needs to happen right across business, where people go, we're not actually doing this because it's the next best option that we can get away with. We're doing this because we've looked deeply into it and it is the best option in the long term. And if our organisation is going to last, we have to start making these decisions now, and we have to go back up to our management and say, yeah, the cost of landfill is this, the cost of the solution we're proposing is this, but once you implement this solution, we never have to go back and revisit it. And I think that's the most important thing, across this whole carbon reduction, environmental damage. We don't want to go back and revisit things. We don't want to rebuild bridges because they've been washed away again. So that's what we have to do. We have to start implementing solutions that are going to last for the long term. Hopefully, when you choose an organic solution, you're going to look favourably at Hungry Bin, because I'm so cute and I've done my hair this morning and all that sort of stuff. And at the end of it, you'll implement a solution that your organisation will never have to revisit because you're already at the top of the ladder. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks so much for your passion. I mean, we've heard from two speakers today who've got completely different solutions for businesses. And I just wanted to, there have been some questions that have come up in the chat, which I'm going to ask Phil from Green Gorilla to please just address and just give us a really brief overview of what Green Gorilla do. We do like to finish in sort of the next 5 or 6 minutes.
Yep.
But the 3 questions, Phil, that have come up that you can answer: soft plastics, who takes away soft plastics? Batteries, is there anywhere that you can recycle those and dispose of them in a safe way? And polystyrene, those seem to be 3 contentious issues.
3 really bad ones. Can I just quickly say, Ben and Joe, is so inspiring to hear both of you guys. And just to think, it wasn't that long ago when you guys wouldn't even exist. And I keep on going to places, you know, to webinars, and I see more and more solutions. Green Gorilla is the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. We shouldn't even be here. That's our view. I mean, we do service and we make money. We're a private company, but we are your last choice. You guys, the businesses, need to make decisions to reduce your waste. Simple as that. So just go back to soft plastics. It is still a problem in New Zealand. As far as I know, there are some individual companies collecting them. We're looking at it at the moment. As far as I'm aware, there's still not a recycler for soft plastics in New Zealand. Could be wrong. I know there are individual companies making products like fence posts, but I'm not 100% sure. There's a new company that's just arrived called TerraCycle, which I'm looking into at the moment. See, they're saying that they're collecting them and they're recycling them, but I need to know what they do and how they recycle them. A lot of companies say they recycle them, but they never tell you actually what they're doing. So we're still looking at that space. Batteries, can I throw a quick comment onto EVs, EV bicycles and EV cars? I actually cycle to work every single day. Ben, 16 Ks every morning each way. EV bikes and EV car batteries, kind of a disaster waiting to happen at this stage. We were talking to a fireman the other day who said there is nowhere in New Zealand that there is a safe place that you can do anything with those batteries. And if a fire, if an emergency and an EV vehicle is on fire, the fire department will let it burn, even if it's in your house, unfortunately, because they can't put out a fire of an EV battery, and they know of nowhere else it can be disposed of safely in New Zealand yet. So we're still waiting on that information. It may turn up, but today there isn't anywhere. And sorry, the last one was polystyrene. Yep. Yes, there is a company in Auckland that we've just been keeping an eye on, and we're going to have a bit of a chat to them next week. And I think they're called Direct Recycle. They've got a black and yellow logo. Now, I will find out some more information about these guys, because they are definitely going around and saying they're doing collections. But once again, collections is different from recycling, as I'm sure Ben and Joe actually know. Anybody can collect waste, but if you're recycling or repurposing, that's a different thing altogether. So we'll find out, and I'll come back to you, Cheryl, with some more information around all those 3 products. But I think the big difference is you do have to ask the questions. When you see the words that we recycle this or we recycle that, ask, how are they recycling it? What are they turning it into? What are they actually doing with the product? And, you know, in New Zealand, as Ben and Joe know, we don't have an awful lot of recycling companies. There's not many, not on a big scale. We're talking about a huge commercial scale. There's very, very few, because New Zealand as a country's sent all its waste offshore, basically, in the past, and now the chickens have come home to roost, and we're actually finally starting to do something, or people are starting to address the issues. Green Gorilla, what we do is we haven't purchased any landfill, although we do take waste to landfill. I'll be straight up and honest about that. But we've actually invested now about $24 million into waste processing facilities which sit on our site in Onehunga, which actually sort the waste out. So we concentrate on commercial businesses and construction, particularly construction, and we have a recent $10 million facility which will separate the waste that companies can't or will not separate themselves. Sometimes they won't separate because they don't have the space. Talking about little companies and Auckland rental properties and leasing spaces are getting smaller commercially, so they don't, or they're not interested. A lot of companies actually aren't interested in recycling unbelievably, but there's still a lot out there. So we can actually separate the waste and send them off to people that we deal with, like OG, who will recycle the fibers, and guys like who are next door to us, Visi, plastics and glass, and places like that. And we do have a composting collection service. So for companies who don't want to use something like Ben, and God forbid you if you don't, because I think you should, that's your first choice. Second choice is Green Gorilla. I know it's shooting us in the foot, but let's be honest. So we actually do collect food waste and food scraps, and we take them to a company called EnviroFit in Tuakau, and they produce compost and settle it out to the farms and horticulture and agricultural places, and mainly Waikato and south of Auckland. That's basically what we do. A bulk of what we do is actually around construction waste, which, as Joe alluded to, 50% of the landfill in Auckland and in New Zealand. It is the single biggest waste stream going into landfill. It is our biggest issue in New Zealand, full stop, from our point of view, and by the figures. It's got to change. It's slowly getting there. We've got we recycle plasterboard, turn it into gypsum. Oh, there you go. Warehouses collecting stuff. They are collecting soft plastics, but what's happening to them next? That's actually what the questions we like to know. Is like they collect them, but what do they do? Do they send them to Indonesia? What's actually happening to the products? I'm sure Ben and Joe kind of going, yeah, well, what actually happens to the products? And that's what we're trying to find out all the time. So that's where we are. We're sitting around about 100 staff at the moment, and as Ben and Joe will probably agree, recycling or repurposing, rediverting waste, that's where you will grow the economy as well. People actually say, like, oh, this is really bad if you're reducing the amount of products people are buying. It's actually not true. A company like us, we battle because it's cheaper to send things to landfill. But now the landfill levy has just increased. It's gone up from $10 to $20 a tonne, which is still pathetic, quite honestly. And it needs to go, it will increase up to $60, I think, in 2024, but it's still way below most Western countries. So it's still too cheap to send to landfill. So we always ask companies, have a really good look. What are you doing? What are you doing to reduce your waste? You must and ask your suppliers. You're asking questions about polystyrene. Where are you getting your polystyrene from? Are you buying some from manufacturer and they're placing their products in polystyrene? Ask them to change. You've got to put the pressure on your suppliers. You must ask the people you're dealing with, and it's got to grow. That's the way we do it. Not a very good advert for Green Gorilla, I must admit, but it's what we believe in as well. You can't keep on throwing everything into the landfill. It just cannot keep happening. And I'll just go back out there now and throw over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you for your honesty on that. And any questions to the floor?
Can I just talk to the reality of recycling from our business? Because I just walk into the warehouse and just talk to it if you want. Is there time for that?
Joey, can I just see if there are any other questions off the floor, and then maybe, Ben, we can let people who want to here stay and the others leave. Any other questions from the floor? No?
So I'm going to pick you up. Oh, here you go. I'm going to walk out from the. I'm walking out from our entry room into our warehouse, and I should be able to. Oh, I won't even flip it. So I'm in the warehouse here, and behind me there's a bunch of bulk bags with plastic in them. We use roughly 120 tons of plastic a year. In our production process, we have a 3% sprue, basically a 3% reject rate of the sprues and parts of the components of the product that are formed in injection molding that break off. And so they're designed to break off in the injection molding process, and then we end up with the product. We have about a 2% reject rate of product in manufacture that comes back to us from the manufacturing facility. So normally when we're doing tile molding, you'd never see that. The plastic factory would just run it back through their own production process. But we bring it all back here and run it through a granulator system that I've got here. So we grind it up at work. Here's the granulator. So anything that you can fit down that hole there will come out as a fine 4mm pellet, and we suck it up through this suction system here and drop it into a bulk bag. And the reason I wanted to talk about it, we use 120 ton of plastic a year. The maximum we can run back into our product is around about 10%. So we're talking about high grade plastic, it's food grade, it's got organic colorants, and the maximum we can put back into our own product of our own plastic once we've regrind it is roughly 10%. So coming back to the idea that recycling is a myth, recycling is a myth. So if I collect up my own plastic, I regrind it myself, I pelletize it myself, the maximum I can put in is round about 10%. Otherwise, we get a massive longevity issue, and we also get a production quality issue that we do. So plastic is not like glass, copper, steel, where you can endlessly recycle it back into exactly the same product, and all you're talking about is the energy cost of reprocessing it. Plastic, you're always going down, and that plastic is always on a timeline before it's in the environment. So one of the things I applaud people taking soft plastic and turning it into plastic posts, but all that's doing is delaying the point when that plastic is in the environment, because who's going to run around and collect up all that plastic that's coming off those posts all the time into the environment? It's just going to be finely divided a lot more over a lot more of the countryside over time. And that's what we've got to be really careful about, that the solutions we're putting in are not guaranteeing our plastic is finely divided over the environment, even more finely divided, whereas at least if it's in one place and we've done something with it, we can in the future maybe use it again. I don't know how that's going to work, but ultimately we just have to stop using plastic. For us as a company, how do we justify that? Because I've just talked about an enormous paradox. Well, we say what we're trying to do is create plastic products that last as long as possible. So a Hungry Bin's probably got a working lifespan of around about 50 years. And that's very different from a milk bottle or a bread bag. And so I think plastic's an incredible product. You go to a hospital and see how amazing it is, but we're just using it for entirely the wrong things. We've got lots of solutions for making food last for a long time that are not plastic. So we shouldn't be using plastic for anything that's single use. And we should only be using plastic for things that either last for a very long time, like a Systema box or something like that, you can reuse and reuse and reuse, or it's got an incredible utility value that we can't achieve any other way. That's my statement about recycling. There you go.
Ben, I have a question for you relating to small businesses. I think a lot of people have the perception that you have to have a rather large amount of organic waste to keep a Hungry Bin going. Do you have any guidelines on because some of our businesses, if it's not a food business, potentially they might need to share a bin. If it's just, waste from a kitchen staff kitchen or something. Do you have any guidelines as to the minimum?
There's actually no minimum. The worms will regulate their population to match the food supply. So we say to people, you can feed them a lettuce leaf once every 2 weeks if you wish. And if you've got a lettuce leaf once every 2 weeks, Hungry Bin's probably not quite the right solution. You can go to a much smaller system. You can buy a small system from the warehouse for $60, and that'll do a lettuce leaf every 2 weeks, no problem at all. If it's just tea bags and a little bit of coffee, 2 or 3 people working in a small office, that's probably a solution that's going to work. I would suggest that you might think, it's only a couple of tea bags. It won't matter if it goes to landfill, but you imagine if all of Auckland stopped throwing their tea bags in the landfill, that's actually a completely measurable effect. And so yes, if you want to share a bin, that's even better, because that just gives you a little bit more community-minded action. You can share the cost around, and can build up a bit of knowledge about how to do that, and you get a get a really good quality output to use in your plants around the office or in your garden, whatever you want to do. The maximum size, I guess I'll go back to the thing is that we've got to remember with sustainability interventions, they are far more expensive than the status quo. And the reason for that is because everyone stripped the cost out of almost everything that there is. In nature, there's a large amount of resilience. So natural systems have a large amount of resilience. They can withstand flooding, they can withstand droughts and all that sort of stuff. And that's because that's an inbuilt profit margin, if you like. But what capitalism does is strips out any lost profit. So if you think about resilience in a system as lost profit, that's the enemy of capitalism. And so what we have to actually do is start building back into our economy resilience. And that basically means taking profit away from our activity or finding other ways to upvalue what we're doing so that we can therefore recalculate our net benefit, if you like. The business models for lots of businesses do not include the environmental output or outcome, and I think that's really important. I know I ragged on about dairying before, but if you're a dairy farmer, you can claim 100% of the credits if you've got a forest lot, and you only pay for 5% of the damage from the cows. So it's like we've just got to reorientate that.
Okay, folks. Joey, can I hand back to you to close?
Yeah, thank you so much. That was so thought-provoking, and just shows kind of what some of the opportunities are. Very heartened by Joe and Ben's story, and thank you also, Phil, for enlightening us on Green Gorilla. And I love your analogy that you're at the bottom of the cliff, and as I said right at the start, we need to say no to plastics. We've just seen what's happened with the plastic revolution, and so let's try and push the issue back to those manufacturers and do what we can. So thank you so much. It's been really awesome. Our next webinar is on the 1st of July. So we're always the first Thursday of every month. And the next webinar is on the conscious consumer. We're seeing a huge rise of conscious consumers. And so we're going to be covering that topic. And we've got presenters from EcoStore and a couple of others to bring to the table as well. So thanks so much for your time and interest today, and mā te wā.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.